of Surround Yourself with Greatness. I'm your host, Kuda Biza, and today I had to, put some more etiquette to it. I had to look ever appropriate because I'm with someone who really lives exactly like that, right? That's part of her DNA, that's part of her brand, and that's part of what she's teaching people through her programs. So I am so excited to have Naretha Hopson today. How are you doing?
I am so well, Kuda. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm thrilled to be here. Thrilled.
And let me know, was I appropriate in my introduction, having the
Oh,
blazer on and everything?
ever appropriate. Ever appropriate. Yes.
Amazing, amazing. So, I've been watching you from afar.
Oh,
I've been seeing you make a lot of boss moves, and I can say that I'm really proud to have you in my network, and I can kind of like, peer through the window and see some of the things that you're doing, and you're teaching me through social media and all these other tips that you're doing. And I was like, you really need to be on season one because some of the things that you're teaching, some of the things that you're talking about are things that I believe any coach, entrepreneur, speaker, author, or someone who's just in the business world, who's trying
yeah.
to make money, who's trying to, get to the next level, they just need to do. So I'm really excited about this episode because we're going to talk about a lot of things. Now, before we get into that, Ever-Appropriate Etiquette Institute is a company that you founded, which obviously I believe is something that you provide services to help people become more, appropriate in professional situations or whatever they're going to be at. So, do you mind talking a little bit about that? Was there a particular experience that motivated you to start your business?
Indeed. First, I want to say thank you again. And I watch you from afar as well. And you inspire me to do more and reach higher and all of the things. So I'm again, pleased to be here. And the journey began for me actually in high school. My sister and I graduated from public high schools, and my brothers went to elite private schools, and there was a different level of exposure and opportunity between our experiences. And I noticed that, went forward in life, and became the first African American female salesperson at a large luxury automotive conglomerate here in town. And so there was a certain skill set that I needed to learn to be successful in that environment. And I was, and, all was well. And I'll go back a little bit. In high school, I had friends who were in a program called Inroads. And so it was for high achieving, high potential students to connect them and groom them basically for the C-suite and for corporate America. And so they were learning how to interview, how to do, all of the things that were necessary in order to do well in their internships and eventually get
Right.
offers for their jobs. And so I worked in our family business. I come from an entrepreneurial family during the time that they were doing that. And so I made sure that I learned everything I could from them. When they got back from Saturday session on Monday, we were talking about it. And
Right, right, right.
what happened is that when I moved forward in life, I noticed that there were certain students that were being groomed for greatness, and they had a holistic grooming. And then there were others that didn't necessarily, they had some of the pieces of the puzzle. So the academic training was there, and they were excelling academically and beating the odds and going through all of the challenges in order to get to a certain point academically. But then when they were placed in that next level, in the place to have an interview for the elite high school, or have an interview for the internship or the job, they didn't necessarily know what to do next. So they didn't know how to dress. They didn't know those unspoken rules of business that no one really tells you. And we don't know what we don't know. And so I noticed that. And then actually, I started 14 years ago by volunteering with an organization that prepared inner students for internships. And so I started there. And from there, I noticed that there was actually a void in the market because there's a certain way that we communicate on a relevant level, right? If we keep it real with each other, that really wasn't happening in the etiquette space. And so I say, I'm not your grandmother's etiquette lady, right? I am not her. I bridge traditional and modern, and that's how we kind of ended up where we are today with speaking.
I like the concept you're talking about, which is modern etiquette, right? Because times change, right? So, can you share a little bit about how you define what modern etiquette is so that people can all understand what you mean by that? But more importantly, speak to how that's even more relevant, even as we're evolving into this digital age.
Absolutely. Modern etiquette is what works today. What is relevant for today's business place, for the marketplace, for social spaces. The world has changed in the last 4 years, and it is changing rapidly in the digital space as well. And so we are, like I mentioned, bridging the traditional with the modern as well, with the things that work today. So we're not suited and booted every day. We don't wear the full suit and tie and all of that in business. That used to be the symbol of success, right? And I don't either. None of us do. However, there is a space for that, and we still need to know what the traditional conservative ways to dress are for conservative workspaces, but we can still be very successful in a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. Some of the most successful people that we know of on this planet they dress a little more casually than before.
ETs of the world.
The EPs of the world. Exactly. And so that is not the way that you dress, the way if being, very stuffy, that's not the symbol of success. The symbol of success today is relationships. Building meaningful relationships and being approachable and really connecting with the people that you're doing business with. That's success these days.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Indeed.
Now,
Indeed.
There's a saying that people say, like, your network is your net worth.
Yes.
A lot of people minimize the value of building a very strong network. And you couple that saying with the one that says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Absolutely.
People have no idea how, having strong relationships work. I've had the fortune to have a lot of Jewish friends.
Yes.
And when I really, pay attention to what's happening in that community, like when someone starts a business, the first thing that they're doing is they're not, trying to advertise and tell the world. They first make sure that their network, the people in their community, support them first.
Yes.
And then once they have the community behind, then they start expanding beyond. But more importantly, leverage the network to open up doors. So imagine you're a fashion designer, right? And you've just come up with a collection. You go to your rabbi, and your rabbi will be like, oh, I know Ralph Lauren's rabbi. Let me make an introduction and maybe get you a meeting with Ralph Lauren. And before you know it, that gets you into Macy's because he's the one calling Macy's on your behalf.
Yes.
Versus you trying to do it because
Yes.
of the relationship within your network you've been able to leverage. So I think people of color, I think if we can really take that learning and insight and really run with it, I think we can see so much success. Now, I want to touch back on the digital etiquette piece
Yes.
a little bit. I get a lot of people hitting me up on LinkedIn, hitting me up in the DMs on social media with opportunities to do business with me, right? So for example, someone says like, hey, I can help you with your social media. But then as I'm reading the DM, zero etiquette.
Yeah.
They're talking to me like I'm their bro. When you're trying to get me as a client and you say, sup, bro, like, I think there's a missing piece. So within kind of like your institute, is digital etiquette something that you currently address?
We do. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because there is a balance between being too casual and too personal. That is that level of personal communication is earned. And
Yep,
so
yep.
you want to be careful about approaching someone from a perspective that's too casual. And I realize that it's a balance because in digital spaces, there's a lot of scammers and spammers and things that are out there, and you want to kind of build that personal connection when you are meeting someone for the first time, but having a level of respect for the person and realizing that even though our society is casual and it is relationship based, that it is still business, and first impressions are lasting impressions. And so if that person would take a few extra steps, maybe it's possible, maybe it isn't, but what if they could do a couple extra steps and reach out to the person who has earned the right to say, hey, bro, what's up? I got this great friend that I want you to meet who XYZ. It's similar to what you just said before with the rabbis, right? So if you have that warm introduction, then it's a lot easier. Just in general, a warm introduction is much preferred over just a cold call, which we do have to do as salespeople sometimes, right? And we're all salespeople. We are all building brands. We are all showing ourselves and reaching out to others. So it's important to have that balance between too personal and too casual on the front end, and also too formal to where you're like, who is this? I don't even speak like this, So I understand what that they were trying to do, and I'll say this, another place in etiquette for me personally, and I would assume for you as well as a person of color, is that it is actually triggering for me, and I consider it very poor etiquette for someone to speak extremely casually to me when they wouldn't necessarily speak that way to someone else with a lot of slang and the bro and whatever. Would you approach another CEO in that way? And so that's something else to consider. That is a part of etiquette as well. It's making sure that we are culturally respectful, and that can be taken as disrespect.
Right, right, right. So let's talk about your workshops a little bit. I've seen stuff on the internet and social media that you even do things where it's even dining etiquette,
Oh
right?
yes, that's my favorite.
You talk about, personal branding and all these different things. So walk me through some of the different offerings that you have so that if someone is watching, maybe it's a young lady in the corporate world who really
Sure.
just wants to polish up
Yes.
her etiquette, what are some of the things that they could do if they come within your ecosystem? What are some of the things they can learn and polish up on?
Sure. You mentioned dining etiquette. That's one of my favorite to teach. It's I would dare to say, one of my clients' favorite to learn, usually because there's food involved. That always helps. But dining etiquette is one of those topics that is underutilized, if you will. So many times professionals don't understand the importance of proper dining etiquette until they get into a situation and either have lost an opportunity or have found themselves completely uncomfortable and lacking confidence when you have 5 forks in front of you, or 2 or 3 forks. And so dining is one of the most intimate opportunities to connect in business, breaking bread. And so that is one of those times where a person learns a lot about you. And we have to make sure that the messages that we're sending are the ones that we actually want to send. And again, there's a lot of unspoken rules in business. Like I've had multiple hiring managers and CEOs look me in the eye and say, Naretha, I will not hire or do business with someone that seasons their food before they taste. And it's like, why? What sense does that make? I know these eggs are going to be bland, right? I've been here before. I know I need salt and pepper. Well, it sends a message to season your food before you taste. And it says that you are rigid in thought. You take action before you get the facts. And worst of all, it's an insult to the chef. It says that you have zero confidence that that chef is going to prepare the food to your liking. And so something as simple as tasting your food before adding seasoning can make the difference between someone wanting to do business with you or not. And it's not always about a transaction, because it's not all transactional, right? But it's also a social cue as to whether a person is going to feel comfortable inviting you to the next space. So can I invite you to the country club and you not embarrass me by showing up and not wearing, the clothing that's within the dress code, or faux pas like cutting your bread and buttering your bread and biting it versus the proper way to dine on bread, right? All of those things make all of the difference, and it's immediate. As soon as you see someone making one of those mistakes, automatically it's like,
So that's actually quite interesting. And the thing is, a lot of these people pay attention, and you don't think they are, and they do,
and they do,
right?
and they'll never tell you.
Yeah. And here's one tip. Let's say you didn't listen to this podcast, or
Yes.
you don't know Naretha. One thing you can do is be a fast follower. So like when you get to the table, don't be the first one who's like diving in, right? If
That's
it's a space you're not really familiar with, sit, be calm, have
Yes.
some light conversation, and then pay attention, and then see
Yes.
what do they pick up first, if it's the fork all the way to the left or whatever it is, right? And then at least like, okay, if two people have done it, maybe that's the way to do it. But obviously you do it in a more stealth mode. If you find yourself in a setting where you're clueless, don't be the first one to then just dive in. Wait, pay attention, study, and then act. So that could be like a useful tip, which kind of like helped me when I came to America, because I grew up in Africa.
Yes.
And I came as a teenager, and now I found myself, in these situations and these
Right.
rooms that I'd never been exposed to. And instead of me just rushing and just doing what I know, I kind of like took a step back, chill, pay attention. Oh, okay, this lady did that, that gentleman did that, they're doing the same thing. So I guess if I'm the third or fourth one to do it, then it's not so odd, right? So that could be a way you could get around it if you don't really know how to do it. But if you want to master it, she's your lady. Reach out to her and learn a little bit. We're going to have her details in the description so you can learn a little bit more about the different offerings that she has, and hopefully you can take advantage of it.
Before you move forward, I totally agree. Follow the lead of the host. Follow the lead of the person who invited you into the space, or the more senior people in the room. Also, it is important, as you mentioned before, to know those rules of etiquette, though, because sometimes
Right.
it's a test. People will do things incorrectly just to see if you know the proper ways to do things. But that's an outstanding point. Read the room and follow the lead of the host. So good.
Yeah, and nowadays with Google too,
Yeah.
right? You can just say, "Excuse me," go to the bathroom, do a quick Google search, So there are ways around it, but knowing the rules is your safest,
Yes.
safest bet.
Absolutely.
Now let's think about the climate we're in right now, right? There's a lot culturally happening. You have kind of like, the movements like Black Lives Matter
Mhm.
and so forth and so forth.
Yes.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Where more people who are not represented are asking for a seat at the table. How important is it to then be prepared once you get a seat at the table, right? Because we're crying out saying like, hey, we want more representation, we want a seat at the table. um, but the question is, are you preparing yourself? And if you're not, how can you prepare yourself?
Oh, that's outstanding question. And I think we need to make sure that we're asking ourselves that question more often and preparing. It is so important. One of the things that I say all the time is stay ready so you don't have to get ready. If you know what your goals and objectives are, always be thinking 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 steps ahead and become the person that you ultimately want to be. Start acting as if now, because you never know when that opportunity is going to present itself, and it's level 5 up the road. But if you're at 7, you're good to go. And it's one of the things that we have to be very thoughtful about, and I'm so glad you brought that up, is that when we receive that seat at the table, we're not just doing it for ourselves. This is not just about us, the one individual. This is about opening the door for people to come after us. And so, how we present ourselves, and it's not about respectability politics. That's not what this is, right? As a matter of fact, I consider what I do, teaching those rules of the game, those unspoken language in business and all of that, I consider that my activism. And so it is about getting that seat at the table, but not just getting it. It's owning the seat at the table, and not only owning the seat at the table, but own the table, the room, the building, the block, whatever it is that you want to own. And we don't necessarily only have to wait for someone to offer us a seat. We can build our
You
own
can create
table.
it, right?
You can bring your folding chair, like Shirley Chisholm said, right? We can do those things, but when we get there, we have to represent. We have to speak the language in order to communicate effectively, in order to make the change that it is that we're looking to make. So, being prepared, staying ready is everything. I love it.
Okay. I'm going to ask a interesting question now. So
Yes.
if there was a billboard with a message
Yes.
around etiquette that you would have to craft, what would it say?
My message would not be, they say there's nothing new under the sun, right? And so it's 2 words. It's very simple. And I have two billboards.
Okay,
one
good for you.
is one is be kind. Period. Be kind. You don't know what another person is going through. You may feel as if someone is in a senior position and they are judging you, or you have to put on for them, not knowing that that other person is going through something, or they're just as nervous to connect with you. They may be an introvert, and being out and even having a one-on-one meeting is a challenge for them. You never know. And kindness will take you so much further than all of the accolades and the degrees and all of the finances. Kindness. Be kind. And the other is, it's not about you. When we are connecting with others, we want to remember that we many times think so much about how we look, how we feel. Is my hair okay? Or crafting what we want to say next without listening to the other person. And the connection happens when we realize that this connection, this conversation is not about us. When we become so interested in learning more about that other person and what their needs are, whether it's personal and or in business, when we do that, that's when the magic happens. That's how you're able to, for conversations to flow. That's when the nerves dissipate, because you are actually connecting in with another person and you're building a lasting and meaningful relationship. And that's what business and networking truly means, is building lasting and meaningful relationships. And so it's not about you. Don't worry about it. Yes, you know all the rules of the game and you have a great handshake and you know those things. But at the end of the day, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So how can we build that first? And all of the rest will come. So if you have a friend, someone that you've connected with on a personal level that says, hey, Kuda, in addition to our conversation, I was considering this, or how can I help you with that? What's your answer? Oh, of course. Yeah, that's easy, right? You don't even want to talk about that anymore. Absolutely. Whatever you need. So that's how you break down barriers, is to really connect in. They say in order to be interesting, you have to be interested. Yes. Yes.
That's amazing. An amazing billboard. I already see it. What I want to do now is I want to pivot a little bit around speaking.
Yes.
Because a lot of people in my community, they're aspiring speakers
Okay.
who are trying to figure out how to go from free to fee,
Sure.
or they're trying to take their speaking business to the next level. And
Sure.
you speak on so many stages, you've been doing it for quite some time. So can you share a little bit about your journey from going from, hey, I want to be a speaker, that was the dream, to now that dream is your reality. So can you walk me through the journey, the trials and tribulations, and some of the things that enabled you to get you to where you are?
Absolutely. It has been a journey indeed. The journey continues. The marathon continues. It started for me, as I mentioned, about 14 years ago, and I am naturally an introvert. And so I'm okay over in the corner, quietly observing. And I was nervous about starting my business because I knew I would have to likely speak in front of crowds. And so it actually took 4 years to start my speaking career because I was scared, quite frankly. And I was in a situation where I had to do a presentation. It wasn't on etiquette. It was on something else at a meeting. It was an Urban League Young Professionals meeting a long time ago. And I was very nervous, so nervous that I was sweating profusely, reading from the paper. The paper was shaking. I don't remember to this day what I was talking about, what I said, and it was awful. When I tell you it was bad. Like, everybody was just sitting there looking at the end like, what just happened? I had a whole meltdown. And I said, okay. In between that, there was a revelation that I have this information, I have these tools for the younger me, or for that young leader who wants to go to the next level and they just don't know why it's not happening for them. Or, there's so many scenarios. I have this information that literally changes lives and trajectories of people's families and legacies and all of the things. I have that information within me, and I have a way of communicating that information that is approachable to people who otherwise may not receive. And basically, at the end of the day, it would be selfish of me to keep thinking about myself versus just doing it. So I started a Just Say Yes campaign. And so anytime I was offered the opportunity to speak, big stage, small stage, TV, whatever, just say yes. And my next speaking opportunity, how do you think that went?
I think you crushed it.
Actually, it was terrible, but it was less terrible than the one before, right? And so
So
it
you're making improvements.
1%, sometimes 5, sometimes 7 each time. But each time I was making improvements. And so over time, it went from free speaking engagements to paid. And part of that asking for what I was worth, or asking at all, is that confidence that comes with the fact that you have something that's important to say. And that, so there was a confidence space that I had to build as well in order to ask and command my worth. And so it wasn't immediate. I did take speaking engagements that were not paid. I would recommend taking some speaking engagements that are not paid because it helps you to build your body of work. It helps you to have, all of the video. So hire a videographer. Make sure that you're doing, what's that?
Creating content.
Create content, absolutely. Day in the life. Make sure that when you're doing those free speaking engagements, that you make the most of it and you get testimonials from as many people as you possibly can. Possibly have someone with you that can get the testimonials from the audience that you can't get, because after you become the speaker, all of a sudden you're the star. Everybody rushes the stage after your presentation and you lose people. So it's important to think 3, 4, 5 steps ahead and make sure that you're building your content and your body of work so that it matches with what it is that you're asking. And so that's what I did. I built a website when I was just starting, and that actually opened doors to opportunities. And this was a long time ago when having a website, your own website, was a big deal. But even today, make sure that you have, a place for people to go and do and connect with you and see your work. And so over time, then I did start, charging. And one of the other things was having speaker friends to know what to ask. Because I had a conversation with someone who this is this weekend at a conference that I was speaking at in Texas, and he is amazing. When I tell you amazing, I'm talking about he just finished a Harvard certificate program like that day. He's very well read, corporate executive, been doing this work for a long time. New book that's selling well, Amazon bestseller, and all of these things. And he ran a number by me that was offered to him for a speaking engagement. And for a new speaker, okay, it's not free. So, you're building, okay. But when I told him some of the numbers that some of my friends who do not have the same body of work, any of the things that he has, right? They are, it was 100, 2, 3, 400x what it is that he was being offered for his gig. And corporations, in many cases, if opportunity is well positioned, they have the resources to compensate well for speakers. And so it's important for us as speakers to make sure that we keep our finger on the pulse and go for it. Go start with your number and make your number something that you are uncomfortable with for a while. And then when you get comfortable at that number, go higher. And so he was blown away to find out what speakers are receiving for their time. And he was doing like a 2-day seminar for a smaller amount Whereas someone else that I know goes in 1 hour and, 5, 6 figures easily for that time, right? So it's important for us to really, again, think bigger, think higher. You're just because you may have just started speaking does not mean that you need to charge less, because you've got however long of experience behind you. That's what they're paying for. It's not necessarily the fact that you just started speaking publicly about it. It's all of the blood, sweat, and tears that you put into becoming who you are. And when you quantify that versus you started speaking last year, those are two very different numbers.
Yeah, and the other things you have to take into consideration is you're taking time away from your family. You're
Yes.
traveling.
Yes.
You're sleeping in a hotel. Who knows what it's like when you're leaving your comfortable bed.
Yes.
So there's so many factors that you need to take into consideration when you're actually doing this, right? Like anything, right? We all start from somewhere, but trust you me, there are people who are making six figures per gig, but obviously they've put in the work.
Yes.
And like Naretha was saying, they have the assets that really back all of that up. So there is that potential where, you could go from 0 to 100K per gig within a 5-10 year period. It's possible for you to start there if you're not like a celebrity or an influencer or has a big audience and a following, and you can put people in the seats just because you're going to be at that conference or at that event. Then it's going to be a hard sell. But don't be shy to really think about, okay, for where I am now, what is kind of like the higher end of the spectrum, and maybe start there and see where they negotiate. And you can also research, you can go on websites for bureaus and kind of like see what some people are charging to kind of like give you the radius of where other people are. And then you can kind of like feel it out based on where you are. And then the more you do it, the more confident you're going to become. You'll find yourself actually then being in a position where you can kind of like raise the price. I appreciate the tips you've shared around speaking. Now, to wrap this up, how can people connect with you if they want to connect with you? And if there's anything that you're kind of like focused on, I know you just did a challenge. Are you going to do another challenge? Feel free to share a little bit more about some of the things you're doing in service of mankind.
Indeed, in service of mankind. I love that. You can reach me at Ever-Appropriate on Instagram, and so I often post tips and tools of etiquette, and so that's a great place to connect. LinkedIn, I'm Naretha Hopson on LinkedIn. And Facebook, I'm Naretha Hopson on Facebook as well. So Ever-Appropriate, I have an online course for dining etiquette. And the website for that is dinewithpolish.com, dinewithpolish.com. And in that online course, we go through all of the basics of business etiquette and social graces and social etiquette. And then I also have a conversation with a sommelier. And we talk about wine etiquette as well and some of the best practices when it comes to wine. So that's an easy way to connect and learn immediately. I coach. As a matter of fact, my next stop is coaching today. And I help to level up. I give you the tips and the tools, and we work side by side to level up and elevate our whatever it is that you are looking to do. Some of my clients are corporate clients, and they're looking to polish their look. They're looking to polish their leadership style, and they want to know what to do at the cocktail reception and so forth. And I have clients who are more socialites, and they want to make sure that they are, on point in the social setting. So I absolutely love that side of things, and working with clients to level up. And yeah.
So all of those details are going to be in the description.
Yes.
And I'll tell you what, if there's something that you could do for yourself that can get you in spaces and more importantly, even build connections, is really understanding what Naretha has to share. Like being able to be in a room where you feel confident, you're doing the right thing, you're doing things proper, and even just you yourself being confident in that setting, it makes a whole difference. I've been in situations where I've gone to events, I'm rubbing shoulders with all these big names, but at the back of my mind, all I'm thinking about is like, do I belong? Am I doing this right? You know, like it takes away from the experience.
It does.
But having taken some time in learning and kind of like leveling up, like she said, now I'm comfortable. I go, I enjoy myself because
Yes.
I know like I'm doing the right thing in the right social setting, and I don't have this thing at the back of my mind that just kind of like has me worried. It's like, oh, did they see that, or what are they thinking? So not only does it give you peace of mind, but it also enables you to enjoy the experience fully, and then you can really then give yourself to everybody there, and then that's how you're able to build these lasting connections that can then open up doors and unlock opportunities for you. And with that, thank you so much for joining me, Naretha, and thank you so much for watching. Again, this is another episode of Surround Yourself with Greatness, where I bring great people doing amazing things so that they can share tips to help you unlock your greatness. I'll see you guys on the other side. Take care.